Yeah.
join or okay, cool.
Yeah. You're
I'm
live.
totally new to the YouTube, the U sphere, the YouTube sphere. I have a YouTube channel, but it's very I don't have a lot of content just yet. So
Okay. Well,
I'm
let's
working on
introduce
it.
ourselves and then we can go on with that because we are now
Okay.
live. Hi, everybody. We were having a pre-conversation before this live. So there you go. It was a good conversation too. So anyway, thank you for being here. This is Joanne Eisen with Reach the Unlimited. And I have Samantha here with me, Samantha Cooper. And Samantha, thank you so much for being here. And tell everybody a little about yourself, and then we'll go back into the conversation we were having.
Absolutely. So, my name is Samantha. I'm an evidential spirit medium and a registered nurse, and I'm also a Reiki energy practitioner and teacher. And I'm also a paranormal investigator. So, I wear quite a few hats these days.
And that's where eventually we are going to go to that part. And that's why I labeled it what I did, because people are afraid of that.
Mm-hmm.
But we were talking before this about, and FYI for you, your comments are to the right-hand side. So if you push on that, then you'll see anybody who comments
Okay.
or on YouTube. And I think a lot of people on YouTube are like, well, how are you seeing that? Some, whatever you're seeing. And some people on Facebook think the same thing. But when on our thing, at least for me, I can see all the comments from both Facebook and YouTube at the same time. So that's
okay, cool.
So you should be able to see both of them as well. And Marsha's here with us. Hi, Marsha.
Hi, Marsha.
So, Samantha, we were talking about some of the craziness that is going on in our world. And I was telling you about, I've been keeping up a little bit, trying not to get too involved, but up a little bit on this trial that's happening with, what is the name? Rothenberg or whatever his name is. The kid that shot 3 people and killed 2 of them. And what we were talking about is in this trial, for my opinion, this judge is really giving him a free ride based on his color, the color of his skin. And if it was anybody else that would be sitting in that seat, hands down, this judge would not be giving him the free ride that he's giving him. I've tried not to watch too much of it, but I keep peeking in every so often because I've been hearing about what this judge is doing. And it's been blowing my mind that this actually can't happen. Hi, Sharon. That a judge could be letting this kid off. I'm not saying that he's guilty or not, but have a fair trial and let both sides be able to give their case without giving one side more preferential treatment over the other. So we were talking about how crazy things are going in our world. And so why don't you talk a little about that?
Well, so one of the things we were kind of ruminating on is this fact that when things are so chaotic or out of control, there is a need in us as humans to feel in control in some way. And a lot of times when this happens, especially I think 2020, the pandemic really gave all of us a good hard look at how the systems that are in place, all the infrastructures in every avenue, not just within the justice system, but we're looking at the healthcare system, all of the breakdowns and all of the cracks were exposed and magnified. And it was sort of like we all were given this reflective mirror to look at and see in all the ways in which things need to change. And it is overwhelming. And when it's overwhelming, we start to look for answers elsewhere. We start to look for ways to make meaning of the experience. And that can start to cloud our thinking and our judgment. And we'll believe anything to allow ourselves to have some sort of semblance or some form of comfort and control, which will lead us to look for answers in spaces where we maybe wouldn't before. Conspiratorial type thinking and things like that. And I think that actually allows people a space to feel a little bit more in control, to feel a little bit more in the know, make meaning of their experience, but it's a slippery slope because then you start to bypass doing any real work around making any real lasting change. And then we end up divided even more so.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What's happening is we're divided. But what I like about that is it's leading to really not making change, which is so important because if you keep doing what you've been doing, you're going to keep getting what you got. And so like we were talking about someone who I know who listens to this person who is kind of one-sided. And I understand why they're listening to this person. And in my conversation with them, I was just like, you are too intelligent to be thinking this way. What is going on? And I feel like, because there's so much turmoil and craziness that's going on, then we want to stay where we feel comfortable and not like breathe outside of our comfort zone and think, is there something better? Is there something different? Because what we've been doing hasn't worked. Look at the mess we're in right now, where we're so divided and people are doing so many crazy things. Yet we can make a change right now if we just reach outside of our comfort zone.
Yeah. And it's also that it goes back to not necessarily, I think there's a sense of comfort if we can blame something bigger and say there is this sort of, maybe there's this evil plan of things. It's like we can blame it on one person,
right?
Or one entity. And it's sort of like it kind of creates a false sense of knowing and comfort because we can label it. But the truth is, it's so many moving parts. There's so many cogs in the machine that in order to break down, it's a really painful process. And most people don't want to do that. So we'd rather look for answers in more abstract places. But what people don't seem to realize is that most conspiracy theories are rooted in, they take roots in very dark places. With regards to, looking at if you really do the research, and these conspiratorial type of thinking is not just existing within the alt-right and the conservative sphere, but it's also existing it's made its way and infiltrated into the spiritual and wellness and holistic health spheres as well.
Talk a little bit about that.
So
the point is something that we all need to read. Like I was talking with someone just recently about mediumship and spirituality and how it works. And we were talking with this other person who was kind of new and whatever. And this person was talking about the limitations that we have. And this is like a group, and you don't want to be in what are you kidding me? Who limits spirit? But anyway, that's their belief. But I think it's this way of, I'm not putting this person down because that's what this person believes, but it's that old thinking instead of coming into the new thinking and how can we make this better? And I feel like the pendulum will swing back. I feel like we're going to go back to that, but we're going to go through some uncomfortable times before we all come back to what is in the best and the highest good for everybody, not just this person, not just for that color, not for this economic, structure that you're in, but everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the hardest part of that is that you can recognize that at the end of the day, we're all come from the same place. We're all uniquely, we're all spirit, right? We're all the same. But the truth is that in order for that to come to light and exist within a society, there's a lot of stuff we have to break down. And it's not just going to be like in one fell swoop. It's going to be something that's going to take a long time, and we have to be in it for the long game. And most people, when they come into having a spiritual awakening or whatever you want to call it, I try not to use these type of words because even the language has been co-opted by these movements like QAnon and things like that. And we've seen that all just move into the wellness sphere. And it's been really disheartening to continue to see the divide.
So talk a little, I kind of took you off track. Go back to that and talk about what you're talking about in the spiritual community and the wellness community about how, like, I feel like we're being given the sugar cube, and the truth. Yeah. Talk a little bit about that.
So I think it really comes down to looking at the roots of spirituality and spiritualism as a whole. I think that a lot of the new age is, the ideas are kind of picked and pulled from different religions, right? Like it's a really loaded topic, but the truth is that I think that at the end of the day, conspiracy theories are kind of all rooted in, I hate to say this, but it's truth. It's rooted in anti-Semitism. So, which comes from the religious sort of church background. And we look at, it's so layered. It's so layered, right? So kind of looking at that, knowing that it's rooted in things like purity culture and, you know, cleanliness is next to godliness, all of that, all of that ties in. And a lot of those fundamental things that we look at in spiritual spaces, especially from a Christian lens, which is where, you know, we end up with those similar themes. And those are kind of taken to an extreme. So I always tell people that, like, I think a lot of New Age ideas are kind of like they take really complex concepts and are sort of cherry picked from different religions and brought together, and then to create this like whole new idea around what spirituality actually is. But really, it's actually quite harmful, because in the process, a lot of these ideas have been really watered down, and they've been really kind of whitewashed. In a way that they're starting to lose their true essence of where they come from, right? People. And so when that happens, we start to lose the fundamentals of these esoteric teachings that are actually being just sort of mismatched together. You end up with this repackaged and repurposed brand of spirituality that's really just, if you look at it, it's just different language used, but it's the same as like Christianity, evangelical Christianity.
Yeah.
So it has a lot of the same themes. So that's why what happened there is that you notice that those same themes are preyed upon because, or they're amplified when the alt-right kind of came in, because we know the alt-right is really rooted in that fundamental Christianity. That's sort of the group they appeal to. So a lot of the same values were co-opted to kind of meet the new age and the holistic wellness sphere. These ideas were sort of touted, and then kind of that language was used, repurposed, and repackaged to start to get people to think in that same vein. And then it just catapulted into this whole thing. Like, I know last year people were saying things like, you know, certain politicians were light workers and that they were here to you see, it's all the same repurposed, repackaged conspiracy theories from, you know, the 1930s and the 1940s that are basically it's just different players. It's the same game.
Right.
And people don't realize it.
I think the thing that really triggered me with that, because I was really much into the health and the wellness sector of that in the beginning, and I loved the path that I took, everything that I learned from it. It was all valuable information. There's truth in it. There's always truth in bad, right? There's truth in it. But what I started seeing is that it was fear mongering. It was just causing people to be afraid of living their life, because if by God you went and got a hamburger, you were going to die of cancer. When, you know, now you can't even enjoy anything in life, you know, and everything in life is balance. There's always balance. It's not one way or the other way. And that's when I started thinking, what is really going on here? Am I really doing what is the best for that person? Like, when I worked with someone, is it really what's best for them? Even though I'm going to tell you, you need to eat your vegetables, you need to eat more vegetables than everything else, you need to drink it's not changing. We know that's the truth. But being able to get out in nature and walk versus I have to go lift a bunch of weight or whatever, or, you know, run 25 miles or, you know, canoe down the OS Canal or whatever, you know, extremes of things. It's about just enjoying your life and having that balance in life. And so that's when I started thinking, there's got to be more to this than what we think.
Absolutely. I mean, there is good and there is light and dark to everything. There is good and there is bad to everything. The key to life is moderation, I think, in all things.
Exactly.
And I think that that's something that it can easily be twisted real fast, right? Especially when there is money to be made. That's part of the other thing. Like, a lot of these people are out there selling supplements. So the people who are kind of like pushing this are selling their natural way of life, their natural and holistic way of life. And there's money to be made. And it just goes to show the capitalist system and how deeply ingrained it is. We all have to make money, but how predatory a supposed spiritual and holistic space can actually be.
Right.
So it's really, and it's the same thing we see that in religion too. So it's like fear mongering there, fear mongering here. So yeah.
So you were mentioning, which I don't know very much about it. I read one little article on it and I saw one little YouTube clip on it. Was that catastrophe that happened in on Friday? Can you
Yes.
talk? And you were talking about some of the undertones that were happening. I'm very unaware with that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it really does tie into this whole like, should we fear the spirit world, right? So, on Friday, there was an event. This is the third year I think it's taken place in Houston. It's Travis Scott is the artist who puts it together. Now, he's notorious for encouraging his crowds to be very reckless, to be sort of like push the bounds of authority and just do a lot of like just be crazy. You could look at the videos on YouTube. I mean, there's people like when it first started during the day, the first issue you knew they were going to have a problem. Was they had people bum rush the VIP area. And before you know it, they have people just running into the event, no tickets, no nothing. And he encourages this kind of behavior from his fans. So, I mean, we're talking like, it looked like it had to have been at least 1,000 people, like without tickets, just running into the venue. The venue was already oversold, or the event was already oversold. And then that evening, during the concert, at one point right before he started, there was he kind of like called for everyone to come closer to the stage. And so people started pushing their way to the stage, and as they did that, a crowd surge happened, and it's a crushing crowd surge. And you'll see this at festivals if you look at like from a bird's eye view, if you've ever seen how tightly packed people can be at festivals. When you have that much force and that many people pushing their way to go to the front, you at one point are just going to get to the point where you're so compressed that you can't expand and you can't breathe, and you're not going to have any control over your body. And unfortunately, when this happened, there was approximately, people were fainting, passing out. There was like, I think they said there were about 11 people confirmed cardiac arrest at the same time. And they didn't have the appropriate, really, I really don't think they had the appropriate amount of staff to handle a crowd of that size, first of all, medic staff.
Right.
And then on top of it, there was also a breakdown in communication between the production company, security. I don't know. There's a lot of talk over whether the performer, Travis Scott, knew what was going on, how much he actually knew. He did at one point recognize that someone was passed out in the crowd, and he stopped the music and said, "Hey, help this person." But I don't think he understood the degree to which this was happening. And they ended up, Houston PD came, the show's still going on. People are doing CPR on people in the middle of like the walkway. Travis Scott, there's a video of Travis Scott up on this platform doing the robot, and there's a woman beneath him, and they're just doing CPR. It's traumatic. And it's just, it's awful. The footage that's come out of this is just terrible. And it just looks like there's a lot of blatant negligence that happened. A lot of poor calls on behalf of the police department, on behalf of the production company, on behalf of Travis Scott, because he continued the show. 30 minutes after they had declared it, supposedly 30 minutes after they had declared it a mass casualty event, the show is still continuing on. And so people ended up, I think there's a loss of life. I think, I want to say, I know for sure 8, but I think maybe 11 now. The youngest one being someone who I think was 10 years old or 14. So, and there's this, but the problem though herein lies, we know that this is due to blatant negligence, right? So this is an atrocity.
Right.
So you see all these videos online, and all these people are coming online saying, "Oh, it was a sacrifice. It was a satanic sacrifice. It was a blood ritual. It was a magic ritual. There are dark forces at play." And people are really feeding into this type of conspiratorial thinking around it, which it's like, if you probably remember Satanic Panic in the 80s. It feels a lot like that again. And you see it, it's not, now we're seeing it, not just people on the, the right-wing Christian people type seeing this. We're talking about people in like the New Age sphere, the occult sphere. They're all sort of perpetuating this idea that there was something darker at play, rather than blaming and acknowledging that this is just an atrocity and it's a sorrowful event that happened. Let's actually hold some people accountable. No, we're just going to blame it on dark magical forces. Like, no. Like, that absolves people of accountability. Like, no, we're not going to go down that road. And so that's really where I see that as more and more fear mongering.
Mm-hmm.
When people start to do that, and it just goes to show how embedded that type of thinking is, because the truth is, at the end of the day, it's human negligence. It was human error. Let's hold humans accountable. Let's not give the spirit world and demons and them credit for this, because but that's what I mean. People want to look for meaning, to make meaning of a really terrible situation. And the truth is, I think the reason that they do this is because sometimes it's scarier to think about the fact that it was just negligence and this was 100% preventable. Which one's scarier?
Yeah, exactly. But I do feel like what you said, it plays more into, now I don't have to take responsibility because we couldn't stop it. This was this force of darkness that came over everybody and we couldn't stop it, which is such a bunch of
cop out. It's a cop out. It's a cop out.
And because that's what's like with the trial.
Yeah.
Negligence? No. He actually did something? Yes. Should he be held responsible for his actions? Absolutely. All of us should be responsible for our actions. I can't go into a store and shoplift and come out and say, oh, well, the devil made me do it. I mean, we make these choices that we make, and we have to take responsibility for them. And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing when it comes to politics, all the way down. I mean, it's been in our world, but what has been happening over the past 4 years has just ignited us to really have to face it, because you've got somebody who is not taking responsibility for actions, has caused a lot of hurt across our country, and is still not and yet, like you said, we have all this divisiveness of conspiracy theories and trying to make some kind of sense out of this insanity that we're all living. But which is very funny that we've gone all the way into this whole other conspiracy thing and all these things that are happening, when it's all about, is spirit something we should fear? But I think that is really the epitome of what we're talking about. All these religions, politicians, definitely when it comes to supplement companies and health food gurus and weight loss gurus, they're all working on that part of us. And that's fear. So talk a little bit about fear in the spiritual world from your experience.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've had to do personally a lot of deconstruction work for myself. I've been through quite a bit of therapy because I come from a Roman Catholic background. I was a confirmed Catholic, at the age of 14. And so I've always had experiences with the spirit world when I was young that were basically when I outed myself and told my parents what was happening, that it was really something like, oh, we don't really do that. We don't talk about that. And so for me, I was always like, oh, well, this is something bad, and then I would, be kind of in that mindset to, this is something I need to fear. And it's something that makes me bad. Right. So I had to undo a lot of that. And that's where the religious deconstruction came in. And because of that, I shut down my connection, as most of us do when we're kids, until adulthood. And when it started again was when I was not really seeking a spiritual path, but more just trying to calm my nervous system and start meditating. And then I started having experiences again that were very reminiscent of my childhood. And I went out and I wasn't freaked out. I was more worried that it was something medically wrong with me. I was like, oh, I better go get my eyes checked. I better go get my hearing checked, and it wasn't like I was doing it out of fear, but more out of a place of like, okay, I kind of have this idea now. I understand the indoctrination that I've been given, and I have to deconstruct that in order to understand my experiences. Because what I've found is that things we don't understand are often things that we are going to fear, where there is misunderstanding, or just the same with like conspiracy theories. When we don't have an answer, we're most likely it's going to evoke a sense of fear because we don't feel in control.
Right.
So the more we can understand something, the greater hold we can get on it, the more in control we can feel, and the less fear we can have. And so one thing I started to find was that with the spirit world is that I've tried to embrace a role of recognizing that every experience that anyone ever has with the spirit world is, number one, filtered through the lens of their lived experiences and their belief systems.
Exactly.
So depending upon that framework and that thread, we have to understand that that's how people will make meaning of the experiences they have in life, including the ones with the spirit world, which are oftentimes they're subjective, they're not objective. So,
Exactly.
and knowing that you can only meet the spirit world as far as you've met yourself, I guess.
Exactly. That is a big statement. It's really true, right? It really, really is true. If you,
Yeah.
like with you, I'm Catholic as well, and confirmed as well. I hated my confirmation pictures. It still happens. Let me tell you. I know. In fact, I finally just told my mom, "What were you thinking when you cut my hair that way?" She goes, "You didn't like it?" I'm like, okay. Anyway, but it is about going back and deconstructing. I call it challenging. I challenged all of my beliefs.
Yes.
Why do I believe this? Why am I thinking this way? Is there really something to fear? But you do something that I have not done yet. Don't know if I will do, because not that I'm afraid of it, but it's just something I don't know. I will, you talk about it and I'll decide after that. Is you do paranormal investigations. Tell people a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, as an evidential medium and having done that sort of objective work and seeing the spirit world and recognizing that all of my experiences with the spirit world have been that of love, I really wanted to explore the paranormal because I wanted to understand, okay, what are these experiences that people are having and why are they so scary? Let me get to the bottom of this. So I started doing paranormal investigative work. I haven't been doing it that long. I mean, I don't really know that I can very much speak on it, but I will say that from my research and what I have found is that I do believe that there are forces that people or things that people will encounter that are energetic, because everything is energy. But as I've said before, it's going to be filtered through the lived experience of the investigator and their belief system. And that's how they're going to label it and make meaning of it. So why not try to approach this through a lens of neutrality and see what comes out? And what I have found and encountered is that so far, I think that everything that is paranormal, there is most of it's attached to the living. Just like
really?
I think so. Yeah.
Explain that a little bit more. Give an example what you're saying.
So there are something called thought forms and egregores and tulpas. All three things are different in their own right. But essentially, how people talk about intention and energy, like energy expands and contracts. It cannot be created or destroyed. And I think that oftentimes when there is a buildup of energy in a space, whether that be to like a very highly charged event happening or someone who is highly emotional, that will expel and be imprinted on a space. And I think because time is really not linear, everything's sort of happening at once, that when you're sensitive, people can become aware of those sorts of imprints of energy that have been made on a space. Also, thought forms are things that, can be created by the living. So essentially, you can haunt yourself. You absolutely can haunt yourself. It's like a not a projection, but kind of like psychokinesis, where there's your actual like conscious energy can be projected into a space and can actually gain, I don't want to call it sentience, but it can cause what we consider to be paranormal phenomena to happen. And I think that with that, a lot of the times that there's those buildups of energy, those thought forms can exist in our spaces and can cause physical phenomena to manifest. It takes a lot, but most of the parapsychological research shows that it does happen to people who experience in spaces where there's been a lot of trauma, a lot of emotional turmoil.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Okay, so let me go unpack this a little bit, because we know when we go into a room and, like maybe somebody was there or something and we could pick up that energy. Okay.
Right.
So we're not projecting, we're not changing that. That's just a knowing of this essence is here.
Right.
So when you go into a house that you would claim to be haunted, and you're going in with your idea of what something is, right? Your fear based on what you think is in this house. Then you're saying that you're creating the energy, almost like what you think you create. You're creating that energy then to manifest.
Yep. And that energy, depending upon if it's a place that's investigated regularly,
Mhm.
where there is a storyline that has been created around what happened there, if more and more people believe that and feed into that story, this energy can manifest, and it can actually provide physical evidence of the story that's been created. I highly recommend, if anyone's curious, there's the only real paranormal investigative show that I love is Kindred Spirits.
Mhm.
And there's an episode, I think it's season 12, episode 5, where they actually talk about how an egregore was created by paranormal investigators in a space in a house.
Well, talk about what that is. What is an egregore? What is that exactly?
So egregore is basically that. It's a thought form or an energy that is made manifest from the energy of the living.
Okay.
And it exists in the space.
Mhm.
And I don't really know how to explain it. Like, it's a really kind of a hard concept to explain, but it's exactly that. It's basically manifested from living people. And it's a story. Like, you could say that like religions are egregores.
Mhm.
The insurrection
Mhm.
was an egregore, right? Like, because it's a group think that people subscribe to. And
Right.
through that group think, it gets enough energy that
Mhm.
it can actually manifest into like full blown phenomena. And it within the psyche of people grouped together like a cult, it can manifest in the actions that the group takes, because they're all following this specific storyline.
Mhm.
So, and same thing with a tulpa, although a tulpa is, I believe that is actually manifested from like one singular person. That's like one singular person's manifestation, whereas an egregore is like a group manifestation, like a group think or a group story. A lot of lore and folklore and stories are like deities and things like that are sort of like egregores in that way. You know, they're energies that you can work with.
So if you were to go into like Ellis Island, we'll take something like that, where a lot of people came through and people died and all kinds of stuff. And people go in there and they think, okay, they're going to go in the night. Well, take like more of like a jail or something like that, because that's where you get more, tragic kind of experiences. And you hear something or you feel something. How would you deal with that as knowing this is not real? How would you work through something like that?
I always approach everything with a level of neutrality.
Mm-hmm.
I see everything as neutral. I do my best to not label something as good or bad or evil or, demonic, because those are all labels that we as humans have created to give rise and meaning to concepts that we're trying to make sense of in our three-dimensional world. And I think when we're dealing with the paranormal, we're dealing within the realm of the intangible. And I think we like to apply dualistic thinking to non-dual spaces. And I think energy is a non-dual sort of space, I guess, if you will. Or the spirit world, I know is for sure that to me, I feel like maybe someone can argue with me on this, but I think the spirit world is a non-dual space. But people try to apply concepts of duality to the spirit world, which is why I think we end up with these sort of, but I think they're two separate things. I think they're two separate entities. I think that people, when they experience those things in a space like that, like where there's been like immense human suffering, I don't think that what they're encountering is of the spirit world. I think what they're encountering is actual energy that's in that physical space, that's existing in a different frequency that we can be sensitive to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's interesting what you say, because like you had said right when we started, as evidential medium, you have not experienced nothing but love. I mean, for me also, when I'm doing my readings, I've never experienced anything but love. Never, ever, ever.
Yeah.
Even when somebody was like, oh, I would like to pull through my mother-in-law, and she just really, sorry.
You had to.
No, she did. She's with me all the time. Really this evil person, then you are projecting that as bad, right? That's not really the truth of who they are, because which is so funny because I had a long talk with someone, I think just yesterday, about the dark and the light. And, you know, if you're looking for it, you're going to find it based on your own fear, not
Right.
based on what is true. Because, so let me tell you an experience I had, actually. This is a really good example of this. So I was in a circle where somebody had brought through somebody in my life that was not a good person. And in this person, I walked away and was like, I never looked back, never wanted to ever go back and experience that relationship again. And so this person brought through this person, this person I was working with brought through this person that I walked away from. And my reaction was like, hell no, 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 I'm not going there. And then, but in my knowing of my experience with mediumship, I know that there's nothing but love on the other side. I know that when we connect with, and this is for everybody, when we connect with spirit, we're connecting with that. They come back as that person they were that we're connecting with. Doesn't mean that that's who they are in spirit. That just
Exactly.
means that they are coming back to wear the coat of the person they were. Like if I had your grandfather, it would be that grandfather's coat that he had when he was in your life. But with that, they're never bad. They're never, you know, whatever they were. Like with my father, I did not like my father as a human in this form. I did not like him. When I first started working with him, I was like, forget it. Don't even come to me. I don't even want to talk to you. But as I started working with him, I started understanding the whys, which I've talked about before. And so it shows how we can have this trigger of a thought pattern. Like you said, we're not neutral. We've got a belief system that's causing us to believe that that person can still hurt us or that person can still have control over us. But that's an interesting statement. I'm going to deviate here because a lot of people feel that even in paranormal, that you can actually have a spirit hurt you, physically hurt you. How do you deal with somebody who would say that or talk about that?
First and foremost, the spirits that apparently are hurting people, I don't believe that they are actually human spirits. I don't think that that's what's hurting people. I think that, or if spirits are using that energy to physically manifest, maybe they overshoot and it comes across as being like, oh, they were trying to hurt me, when really it was more of like they just wanted acknowledgement that they're there. But even then, I question that. And I think that it more has to do with that egregorious energy or that thought form energy that has manifested. And I think that in and of itself is non-human. It doesn't mean it is bad. It just means that it's energy that is very powerful. I myself have friends who have they themselves haven't been scratched, but the people they've been on investigations with have experienced physical phenomena such as scratches and things like that. But I will say that the people who usually end up with this type of injuries that we see, or they actually get hurt on these investigations, aren't even people who are related to the paranormal team. It's usually like people in production, or it's, and that to me is kind of interesting because I don't know really where they're coming from in their belief systems, or what maybe the energy is feeding on from them. It's like, what's happening there? And also being very honest and objective about the experience and going back to debunk, well, did they bump up against something while they were moving around, you know, during the investigation? Like, I think we have to look at all of those factors before coming to a conclusion and saying, oh, this is paranormal. This is of a paranormal nature. This absolutely happened because of a paranormal entity, versus I honestly don't think it's the spirit world. I don't think it's a human spirit. I think that when you have phenomena like that, that's particularly is coming across as aggressive or malevolent, I feel like it tends to affect those who have those types of belief systems too. So, you know, the belief system of like, there's something to be feared. And to me, and that's what I've found. So I don't know.
That's interesting because I guess that's something that I haven't been able to really come to grips with, right? Because I totally believe that spirit is always love, always love. So what happens in these situations where people feel like they have been attacked by an evil spirit? physically. I mean, physically, we're talking the physical, because you can't get away from, if someone has a scratch, that's a physical result of something they were doing. So, and that's the part where I haven't really, not that I believe that it was a dark force. And I do believe that, the spiritual world, all of our spirits, ancestors, angels, whatever, not the angels, we'll take them out of that, but the ancestors, I mean, they're still learning too, to some extent, how to communicate with us. We're all learning from all these experiences. So I can understand that there could be times where,
there's like an overshoot.
Yeah, it's something that could have gone awry. But there's a lot of people believe that they were attacked, or that something physically happened to them, which definitely, is real in their mind, and something that we're not saying don't, this doesn't mean anything, ignore it.
Right.
But it does have to go back to, how do you resolve something like that? It's, how do you talk with someone or help them to see that you were a part of how this happened?
I think it's really about bringing awareness to themselves and what they're going through on an emotional level, and having them be really honest with themselves about what's going on in their life, in their physical life. Because a lot of times people will want to blame what's happening to them on, it's a spirit in my house, it's an energy in my house, when actually it could be the opposite. It could be that this is manifested because you've been going through a difficult time. And I think a lot of people, it's hard to take that sort of on if they're not ready to. So, I think you never want to, number one, invalidate anyone's lived experience. And I respect all cultural belief systems. So if people that's their belief system, and they're not going to change that. So I have to work within that framework that they're going to understand. But I think it's also important to let them realize that they have complete and utter power over the energy in their space. You always do. You're always in control. You only are going to allow something to have as much power in your space and within you as you allow it to. So it's about empowering them to take their space back, to teach them how to clear the energy themselves, how to keep the space and the energy clean and moving all the time. Because just like we shed dead skin cells, we shed energetic energy. We shed energy. We just do. And it sits in a space. And if you've felt it, you walk into a room, the windows haven't been opened in a week, and, it's really stuffy. Like, you can feel that. It's thick, right? It's there. So it's just simple techniques like that of teaching people, like, look, you're in control of your energetic space. And I think that may be why, looking at the people who maybe do have these experiences, a lot of times they're people who maybe aren't very good they don't know much about energetic boundaries, and they don't, it's usually the unsuspecting, right? It's like, so I think that has a lot to do with it as well. So it's a mixed bag. It really is. But I try to come at it from a place of objectivity and neutrality as much as possible.
Well, I love what you said, because really, I think that's the thing that we all need to remember, is that anything that happens in our life, we have control over. It's how do we choose to keep that control? Do we choose to give it to somebody, or do we choose to keep it ourselves? So when you're in a situation like that, and that spirit is pure love, they just are pure love, then you have to ask yourself, what is inside of me that's causing me to be fearful of this situation? And a lot of times it's something that, a little something that was put into your head, a little statement or belief system, or the history of something. Like, I know a lot of the buildings and stuff that you go to have a history of normal kind of activity. So exactly what you were talking about is, if you think it's going to be created. It's just what it is. Energy is just energy.
Yep. And the more you feed something energy and intention, the more it's going to grow and build. Right. And that's why people will feel a heaviness and a darkness in places where there was immense human suffering, because that existed there. That imprint was made on that space. And it feels sorrowful. So you will feel that. It doesn't necessarily, it just means that it kind of goes to show you how we have deemed emotion that is either heavy or sad or sorrowful as being negative
Mm-hmm.
when it's just another part of the human experience, the
Mhm.
range of emotions that we have, that we came here to have. So I think it's about not labeling it.
So I'm sure somebody's asking this because I'm getting it pretty loud and clear in my head, and I think it's a good question, so I'll ask it. Is what do you do in situations where a building may be haunted? People may think it's haunted to the point where like plates are flying out of cabinets and doors that are opening and closing, or drawers are opening, and like we're going back to the Exorcist kind of stuff. How do you?
Well, I have yet to experience that type of activity. Every time I've heard about it, it's usually there's nothing to substantiate the claims of being. It's more on I'm learning it from a third party. So that type of phenomena is a paranormal investigator's dream, to be honest. Like if we could capture that like consistently, it would be amazing. But when you have reports of it, you have to remember that everyone's experience is filtered through their own lens. So maybe I never want to say like someone blowing it out of proportion, right. But I do think you have to look at it objectively. But the biggest thing is it's more about, I find that when I do go to do cleansings and things like that for people, because I do it on a referral basis only. But it's always more or less about educating. And most of the time, what I do become aware of is their loved ones in the space that are just trying to get their attention, and they're given little they're the ones, flickering the lights, or they're the ones, kind of like they get the little taps on the wall, or keeping them up at night, or they feel like someone's watching them. And it's like, and usually once you acknowledge that grief that's there, that maybe needs to come out, that needs to be processed, and their loved one has been trying to reassure them that they're there, so they're overshooting, so they're having this, so you have that grief energy mixed with the overshoot of the spirit person that can cause physical phenomena to manifest. But you still have to be very discerning and really go to that place of, I need to look for mundane explanations over mystical and magical and spiritual always. So I'm always looking for, when I would do house cleansings, I'm always looking for, is the electrical up to par?
Right.
Do what is the pipes? Are the pipes in the walls? Are they, like, do you have a leak? Like looking at all of like the mundane potential things before giving it credit to the spirit world. Because I think a lot of times people want to attribute things to the spirit and paranormal when really there are logical explanations. I think a lot of the videos you see of like plates flying and forks going this way and all that, that's all fishing line. Like people are they're doing that for clout and views. Like I'm just going to be honest. Like the paranormal videos you see on YouTube, most of them are fake.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're watching like an investigator who's like on a real investigation and they're having, they're having experiences. But even then you have to be careful, because people there's no shortage of ghost hunters anymore. Everybody wants to have their own show. And so
it's funny how we have this infatuation with that, this love-hate relationship, right? We love it. It's exciting. Is that really true? And it kind of gives us that more, I don't know, like bad boy kind of tangible connection with the spiritual world.
Absolutely.
Versus, the spirit, the light and the love kind of thing. But I feel like, you do have to be wise. You do have to check things. But I feel like you said something really important about we have, okay, how do I say this? We have control over things, right? Again, I for me, in my experience, well, the first thing I want to say is seeing spirit or spirit watching us. I mean, that's one of the first things people ask you, right? Can spirits see me? I don't want to take a shower. They see me in the bathroom or whatever. And, and I used to be the same way. It was like, do they see me? Whatever. But energy is what they are now. They're not a person that has this attachment to the human form, and I'm seeing through my eyes and I'm going to put a judgment on what I'm seeing. That's all human stuff. That's not spirit. Spirit is energy. So they're not watching you do all those things. But on the other side, it's really about our belief system again. I like us. when you're talking about like the lights flickering or the pipes creaking or, rattling or making noises, spirit can do that with the energy, but we look at that as a bad thing. Where exactly what you said, if we can look at it where they're connecting with us, like what's her name? Abraham Hicks. When her husband had died, what's her first name? I can't think of her first name.
Esther.
Esther, thank you.
Yeah.
When he died, he flickered the lights to her for a long period of time. She didn't catch it right away. And then she realized that that was him flickering the lights. And that's our belief system, to say that the lights are flickering, so I'm going to be afraid, versus the lights are flickering and that's my Father saying, I love you and I'm watching over you, which is just a shift of your perception. And I have never met anybody ever who saw plates flying, knives flying, doors, and there's a house down the street when I first started, coming awake and paying attention to things. And the stories are that happens in this house down the street. And I know that there are spirits there. I can feel the energy there, but I think exactly what you said, it's more of the what people believe of that house, because there's stories, if you look it up, about literally what I said, where the cupboards are opening and closing and plates are flying and nobody will live there. Although I wonder sometimes on that house if it was something that was done because the owners didn't want anybody to have the house. And so that made it, now people were afraid of it. Nobody would rent it. Nobody would buy it. Nobody would come near it. So there's that part of it as well to think about. What is to be gained by labeling something haunted?
Yeah, it's funny now because if you go around in LA, I think now there's like they're putting like on the real estate signs, they'll say not haunted. Like, and I think that's hilarious because I'm just like, okay. But I do think there's something to be said for I think there's something to be said for those instances where it is, in fact, I truly do think that spirit, because they're omnipresent, they can come and go as they please.
Exactly.
They're not stuck anywhere. I think that's the other thing too. You get a lot of this talk of like, oh, the spirit is stuck. Oh, they're stuck in this 3 dimension. And it's like, no. Like, they're not stuck. Like, they can come and go as they please. And I would visit, if I could go anywhere after I transitioned to the spirit world and I could visit the places that I loved in my human life, like, well, yeah, sure. Why not? I'm going to go there. I'm going to put a little bit of me over here in Disneyland. I'm going to put a little bit of me over here, at the bar I used to frequent. Like, why not? Right? Like, why not visit these places that brought me joy in my human life and be around those who I love as well. Exactly. Right? Exactly. The coming and the going. So even though, I'm in that sort of place where I'm no longer wearing that coat of who I am as a human. There's still that piece of my me as consciousness. That sliver of this life is still going to be existing in the sphere. I mean, who knows? I mean, I think that's the other thing too. I think the most important thing is to admit that no one really knows.
Exactly.
And we're searching for answers, and we're trying to apply. We want to know so badly, but I think there's just things we're never going to understand. So it's really fun to speculate. And I think that makes a really good medium and a paranormal investigator is someone who can admit the fact that, like, there is no hard and fast. Like, we just don't truly know. Like, we can only speak from our lived experiences, and our lived experiences shape the way that we perceive what we think happens. I mean, I did when I first started, I thought, oh my gosh, could spirits get stuck? And then when I moved in my development, I realized I have absolutely nothing to back that up. Every encounter I've ever had with the spirit world that can be validated, that I know is real, does not support that notion. So
I have to agree with that. Out of all the readings that I've done, I have never, ever communicated with a spirit that said, I got stuck. I just spent the last 10 years in La La Land or Nirvana or whatever they get stuck in. I'm sure we could pick hell or heaven, but they never say, oh, I got stuck. And also people that say, oh, well, they have to go through some kind of training or whatever. I'm like, you're a spirit. Why do you need to go through training? You're you pass over into the light and you're still spirit. There's nothing else that happens. So this whole thing about, they have to go to some training before they can communicate with you or learn how to, for me, in my experience, if somebody says, I would like to, and I have read people that had just passed. So, it boggles my mind. But again, I think you have to be really careful about who you're going to, who you're talking to, what are their belief systems, and also how much money are you paying them and are they bringing you back? Like there's a lot of people that we know that will only do readings for people with their loved ones like once a year or once every 5 years or something, because really it's not about developing this relationship with the spiritual world for them. It's about they're helping us through our growth as a human being, because now they're back into the truth of who they really are. We're still doing, like you said, this coat of a human that still wants to go to Disneyland. So
right. I mean, and I think that's valid. And I think I'm like that too, where I encourage my clients to, I don't want my clients to keep coming back. I hope that one time with me is enough. And so I do have clients that will come back, but it's like once or twice a year. And I think it's because it's good, because I think that we created some of these ideas that like, the spirit people need time to, like I said, we're applying dualistic laws to a non-dual space.
Exactly.
To make meaning and understand the experiences we're having, when really we have to admit that we don't really know.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm the same with you. I've brought through people who died the same day and I didn't know it. And they came through just the same as someone who had been passed for, 20, 30 years. So it goes to show that there is a lot that we just don't know, that everything's really speculative at this point. But you're absolutely right. You need to find people who are aligned with your belief systems and your values, who are going to use terminology that, because you never want to, as a medium, and evidential medium specifically, you never want to impart your belief system onto your clients.
Absolutely.
Ever. And you never want to proselytize. So there are Christian mediums, there are Catholic mediums who filter the spirit world through that lens, and they have those experiences. And that way, doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that's how they're experiencing the spirit world.
Yeah, exactly.
In a way that's right for them. So there's nothing wrong with that. As long as they're not pushing their agenda and their beliefs onto those who don't share them, that's where it becomes problematic. And that's a big part of, at least on social media, like particularly with, typical some apps, you'll see a lot of that arguing back and forth. Well, this way is the right way to believe, and that way is the wrong way to believe, and my way is the way to do it. And it's a lot of back and forth.
Well, this is like any other sect of people, I guess you can say, because it's not really a religion. It is a belief system, right? I have a strong belief that I can connect with your loved ones on the other side and bring you healing. That is my belief. But with that, though, I want to say it's not wrong. And I don't want to tell people not to go to mediums more than once, because I know for me, having that conversation with my dad to understand who he was as a human being, and then being able to feel him as a spirit, has done a lot of healing. The situation that happened last night, I was triggered. I personally, my human self, was triggered by a spirit that is no longer that person. So that was, to me, the first sign of, okay, this is something you need to deal with. You've now seen a weakness within you that you need to heal. So I want to make that clear. There is healing from it. But the difference is to keep going to a medium to make yourself better when you're not doing your work. You have to do your inner work. You have to make sure you are doing, nobody can come into me and help me deal with the triggers that I had last night. Nobody can. I have to deal with them myself. I have to figure out what in me, because I have a strong belief and I have experience with, love on the other side. So I knew perfectly well that was coming from with me. So what I'm saying is that, we do need help and guidance through our journey. I've had help. I'm sure you've had help with people that have helped you to heal and to understand things, or come to understand why you do something or think something or whatever, have a problem with something. So we do need that. But that's different than somebody coming to you and continuously wanting to talk to the same person to get the same answers to heal something within them that they're not working on being able to understand and be able to get over and move forward from.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I found is that in my development, anytime I would encounter a particular communicator that maybe had exposed me to a life experience or an emotion that I had not fully expressed or lived with myself, it maybe, if it triggered within me this sort of feeling of like, wow, I don't know how to express this, or I don't know how to understand this, it was always a cue for me to like look deeper within myself and say, okay, especially if I was still thinking about that element of the person's life or that element of the reading a couple days later, because normally I don't remember things. So I know when I remember something from a reading, it's usually my way of being like, oh, Samantha, you have some things you need to look at. It's like spirit's like a mirror. Like I always tell people, it's healing not just for the sitter and the spirit person on the other side, but I think it's also healing for the medium as well. And we're always on a journey of development, and personally and spiritually. So therapy has been like a game changer for me. I mean, I can't speak highly enough of like, I'm all for, if you can find the right therapist, oh my gosh, like that is like, that will make all the difference in your development as a medium. It will make all the difference in your healing. It will make all the difference. It could just be so beneficial. So I think that speaks volumes too. So taking, like you said, the experiences you have with the medium when they do bring through loved ones that may have been triggering or whatever have you, those experiences. I have had clients like that where their loved ones did really awful things to them when they were alive. And I've connected with them once, and then I connect with them a year later, and it feels like a different communicator. But I also know that that's reflective of the work that the person on the other side sitting across from me has done too. So and that's really profound to see.
So I'm going to just do a complete circle now and come back to the beginning. What is the scariest when you first started, or even now, what is the scariest thing that you still encounter when you're going out for ghost hunting or paranormal activity?
The mountain lion.
I love
I'll be honest, I'm mountain lion.
You did have that.
I'm telling you, it's always the stuff in this dimension that's frightening to me. The other stuff, I'm like, no problem. Like, oh, shadow in the corner? No, I'm good. Full blown I haven't had a full body apparition yet. On an investigation, I'm sure that will probably freak me out a bit because it catches you off guard as those things do. But I would probably say that it's more of the stuff that exists in this world that freaks me out more than anything. I will say there was an instance where we had a really strong, you can watch my video on my YouTube channel. It's, I think I'm under Mindful Me. I'm so bad on my own YouTube channel. But there was we did an investigation. It's at the same video where we had the encounter with the mountain lion. We did an investigation in a park, and we were standing there and we were asking questions to the energy that was in the park. And while we were standing there, we were standing right beside a slide, and there was no one else in the park. It was really late. It was dark. And it sounded like we asked a question. And one of the stories was that there was a particular entity in the park that people often saw. I can't remember what they called him, but how they described him was very vague. And we asked something to the effect of, are you from a different dimension? Are you human? And it answered no. And then we said, are you from a different dimension? And it said yes. And then we were standing there, and all of a sudden there was a huge thud on the slide where we right behind us where we were standing. It sounded almost like someone had taken like a beanbag and thrown it at the slide. It was so loud, Joanne. That's probably the scariest thing I've ever had, because we could not find a logical explanation for what made that noise. There was nothing on the ground. Nothing had fallen from a tree. There was no one else in the park. Like that was probably the most incredible. I think that was like maybe my second investigation. That was one of the most incredible pieces of evidence I've ever gotten so far. But
was it cold outside?
It wasn't really cold because this was in the middle of summer. It was the middle of July, and we're in Simi Valley, so it was like, I don't know, like 71 degrees. It was not cold, so it was just very bizarre. We tried to debunk it. We couldn't debunk it, and we actually did get evidence. Some things that came through, like our portals and the EVP sessions, of names of people who actually did pass away close to the park. So that was kind of interesting. That was a very interesting investigation. So yeah, I would say that probably.
You guys left that one pretty abruptly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we actually kept going for a while, but yeah, but I mean, it definitely was a little bit more like, it was a jump scare for sure. So if you're watching it with headphones on, just be sure to just be ready, because and then I'm doing another investigation. So there will be more investigative videos coming up. I have an investigation coming up at the Cosmopolitan Hotel down here in San Diego in Old Town.
Oh, wow.
So that's really exciting.
How do you come up with where you go for your investigation?
We sort of just we do a lot of like history and digging and just looking to see like different locations in Southern California or areas that are easy to travel to that are notorious, that have notorious, they're notorious for hauntings, and just so we can go check it out. And we allowed to do the Whaley House, but the Whaley House is they're not open for investigations since COVID. So, but yeah. So there'll be more, I promise, more paranormal content's coming from my YouTube channel, but
tell everybody what the name of your YouTube channel is.
I'm like, hold on, guys, let me look, because I think if you just Google, or not, I'm gonna say Google. Like, why am I gonna Google something? Hold on, let me just look at my YouTube channel, and that will tell me. Okay, my YouTube channel is Mindful Medium Samantha. Mindful Medium Samantha. So I think if you just type that into your YouTube search engine, you will find it. I have 51 subscribers. So
yay.
If anyone wants to like and follow and just hit that notification bell so you get notified when I post content, I would appreciate it.
Okay. Everybody go there. I think I am following you already. I'll look though when I'm done with this. So what is the last thing you want to tell people about our conversation today? Because we have really talked about a lot of things. So you get to pick. What is your last nugget you would like to share?
I think it's just to remember that you're always in control of your experience and your energy in terms of when it comes to dealing with the spirit world and the paranormal. Understanding that you control your energy in that way. And I think once people realize that, it can be such a game changer.
Well, I think people don't realize that no goes even in the spiritual world, right? If you have a belief that something is bad, you can say, no, I don't believe that. This is not true. It doesn't mean, because our mind is very interesting and very powerful. And so sometimes it takes a little time for you to convince yourself that it's not real until you have. But you always have the right to say no. You always have the right to challenge what it is that you're feeling or seeing or hearing. And so when you start doing that, then it really shows you that you have a lot more control than you think you have.
Absolutely. And I think that taking that power back and empowering ourselves is so incredibly important. In everything we do. It brings a new perspective to every element in our lives. So yeah, that's I guess that's what I'd say.
I love it. And also, you know what you think you believe. So just keep being positive and know you have the power. So thank you so much for being here. I sure enjoyed this conversation. It went by so fast.
I know. Thank you for having me. This was really fun.
I agree. That's why I do it. It's so much fun to talk to people and get different points of view. And then I start chattering. I need to button it a little bit more.
Well, my question is so does this video, I know it's broadcast to, where are we broadcast? I don't even know.
It's on Facebook and YouTube. together.
Okay, perfect. Now, does it get archived so people can watch it later or yeah, okay.
It's constantly live. You can go on and share it if you want. If you need a recording, I can get that too. So I'm giving you the whole after show conversation during the show.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
See, I'm such a noob. I have no idea. Like,
I know you started the show with how does this work, and now you ended it with how did it work.
how does it work?
I like what you did.
We just did full circle. That's what that was. That was just a whole circle moment right there.
It absolutely was. I do want to say that tomorrow night, if anybody watches this and is interested, Marcia and I will be doing card readings. So there will be card reading night tomorrow. So come 4:00 Pacific Standard Time here, same place, and we'll be doing card readings. And thank you, everybody. Please take care. Know you have power. And I agree with, I don't know how many times Samantha said it, but I agree with it. We do not know the truth until we go to the other side. But all we can do is keep challenging ourselves, keep our mind open, find ways to make your life better. And that's really what we're here to do.
Mediumship isn't about the deceased. It's about the living. It's about how can we live our fullest potential. So
exactly.
Yep.
So go on and be you. All right. Take care, everybody. Thanks for being here. Bye.
Bye.